What's up everyone, Paige Bjerkaas here, and I'm here to share some knowledge on putters.
Hi, I'm Peter McBride. Today I'm going to be talking about hitting gaps.
My name is Dustin Keegan. I'm going to try to teach you guys how to throw a straight shot.
Welcome back to Physics of Flight. On this episode, we're focusing a little bit more on accuracy. We've got 2018 FPO World Champion Paige Bjerkaas here to talk about throwing putters. Picking up one of her signature Fuzion Judges is probably a good place to start.
What's up everyone, Paige Bjerkaas here, 2018 FPO World Champion, and I'm here to share some knowledge on putters. So throwing putters is one of my favorite parts of the game, and I feel like one of the strongest parts of my game, so I'm here to share some knowledge, hopefully teach you guys a couple things that you can use during your rounds and during your practice so that you can use, putters in tournaments and trust where they're gonna land and how they fly. So let's get started. First of all, throwing putters is probably a very important part of the game just because they like to fly straight. Drivers, fairways, mid-ranges, you kind of need to turn, kind of manipulate the disc with your angles, and that's all, good and well, but if you need a straight, whether it's short, whether it's long, where you don't want a lot of deviation, putters are the way to go. That's when I throw putters. If I need, a straight shot, maybe 270 and in, I'll use putters. All right, to start, we'll talk about throwing putters for distance, whether you use it off the tee or you have kind of a long up shot that you want it to go dead straight and not, deviate from its path. Throwing putters far is like the #1 way to go. There's a couple things I think about when I'm throwing my putter as far as I can. Number one is getting it up high, right? So putters, if you throw it like a normal drive, they're not gonna get very much distance because they're so deep, so when you get air underneath them, they'll have that carry and they'll get more glide. So if you try throwing putters far like you would a driver, you're not gonna get very far because that air isn't underneath it. So that's one thing I'm thinking about when I'm lining up my shot. I make sure to get it high just so that it has that nice carry. One thing I noticed, I guess, when people are throwing putters hard and trying to get distance is it wobbles, right? And I think it's because, you're not putting a lot of spin on it because you don't trust the putter. You really got to trust it, and the only, if you release it, throw it hard and flat, like I said before, then it will turn over. But if you get that air up underneath it, that glide will help it carry over more. So put more spin on the disc. If you find yourself wobbling the putters when you're throwing it, just trust your putter. If you get the air underneath it, I promise it won't disappoint. When I'm throwing my putters for distance, I make sure to use an overstable putter like the Dynamic Discs Judge, a Fuzion Judge. Because they're the more durable plastic, they're going to be a little bit more overstable and they can handle more of that power. So I always kind of use more, I guess, premium plastics when I'm trying to get distance out of a putter shot. Another thing is because I throw the Judge, I like to aim a little bit right of the basket. If you're throwing an overstable putter that, you're trying to get far, what I do is I aim just a hair right of the basket, maybe 10 to 15 feet. And I throw it if I'm trying to get max distance, I'm reaching back as hard as I can. Everything else is normal, except instead of coming straight across, I'm making sure I release up here. And I'll practice my stroke just a little bit and make sure I'm getting that pop. So let's say I'm moving in a little closer. I don't need a maximum distance shot, and I need to, step down a little bit. Still, I'd recommend using an overstable putter. For me, I go down to the classic Judges. The classic Judge is probably the most stable of the baseline plastics compared to the prime, the blend, and the soft. So that's why I like using these. But what I'll do, instead of focusing on that reaching high, I'll kind of bring it down just a hair lower because I don't need as much glide. I still want to get a little bit of height so that it does get to the basket, but I'll make sure I'm just not aiming quite as high. Another thing, instead of, if I'm trying to get maximum distance with, like a Fuzion Judge, I'm reaching back all the way, I like to maybe shorten my reach back and use a little less body. If you're turning your body all the way back to the basket, you are getting that extra power, which is good for longer shots. But if I just need to get up and down, it's not quite as far, I just won't turn my body as much. And again, and I'm sure you guys have heard Paige Pierce talk about it, transferring the weight from the back leg to the left leg. I won't lean as far back. When I'm trying to throw far, I'm leaning back and popping up. If I just need to get up and down, I'll barely come back on this leg, barely reach back, and making sure I still get a little bit of air underneath it, but I'm aiming more maybe towards the top of the basket at this point. But I'm also, again, aiming just a little bit right because I know my Judges are going to be a little bit stable. And sometimes if I'm even closer, I'll either throw a jump putt or I'll toss up a little hyzer. There are those, at least for me, there's those distances maybe 100, 120 feet where they're so close, but you know, I'm nervous, I shouldn't mess it up. What I'll do is I'll just throw them on a little bit of a hyzer, because you know, once nerves come into play and everything, maybe your release point or how you release isn't quite as good, but the hyzer is always a trusty release for me, and I think for a lot of right-hand backhand players. I'll just pop a judge, kind of, again, a little bit high on a hyzer and just have it fade towards the basket. So yeah.
Peter McBride is a team player from California, and he's got some knowledge to share on hitting gaps. Now this episode was filmed a little bit more like an interview, so you'll see the question and then his answer.
Hi, I'm Peter McBride, and welcome to Physics of Flight. Today I'm going to be talking about hitting gaps. So hole 6 at Vista is a really good example of hitting a gap out here. And it's actually one of the smaller gaps out of the 3 options there are. And for me, it's just a good shape, and it's the gap that I'm comfortable with hitting. Usually I look at the gap. If there's multiple gaps, I like to look at them all and decide what shot shape is my highest percentage and what I'm most confident with. And once I decide that, I try to visualize the shot that will be successful getting down the fairway, and then I try to pick a disc that will fit that shape well. For me, I like to, depending on how far I have to go, I like to disc down, because I'm more confident in hitting a gap with a mid-range or a fairway. So usually if it's a gap, I like to throw a fairway or a mid-range. I love the Emac Truth. I really like the retro anchor and the Getaway and the Explorer. So when I hit gaps, I usually try to slow down my footwork just a little so I don't get ahead of myself with my lower body, and it allows me to really make sure I set my body up in the right position to hit the gap. I stare down the target until I turn around, because I turn way around, so my head's all the way behind, looking directly behind me, but I don't even think about that anymore. I've thrown for so long. But I definitely, when I'm running up, I stare down my target, and I don't look at the trees I'm trying to miss. That's the biggest thing. The biggest advice is focus on what you're trying to do, not what you're trying to not do. So if, okay, there's these 2 or 3 trees you have to miss immediately off the gap, don't be thinking about, oh, I need to miss those. Thinking about the gap you need to hit and visualizing what it takes to go through that, and then just make it happen. To hit a gap consistently, I'm really comfortable with hitting it with just a touch of hyzer, but that's just me and how my game is progressing. Like in the recent years, I've been more confident with throwing slight hyzer flips, especially in the woods. Just because you can throw less stable discs and get more shapes out of them. But someone like AJ Risley is a good example. He's really good at those flex shots. He can throw something stable on an ante and hit a gap really easily. So if you're a player that doesn't have a wooded course, but you really want to practice hitting gaps, a good piece of advice that I usually do is go out to a field or a local course and maybe not throw the shot, but focus on something in the distance and really try to throw a straight shot right at it and really focusing on that. My local field has soccer goals, so I really like to throw at the goals from a distance, or try to hit those goals, walk about maybe the length of the field. That's a really good length, 300, 350 feet, and just really try to hit that gap, because it's really not that big of a gap out there, but if you can hit it at 300 feet, you can really hit small gaps easy. So those are some tips that help me hit the gap. I hope you can apply them to your game, and I hope you stay in the fairway.
For the last segment on this episode, I asked Dustin what he wanted to teach about, and he said he was down to teach about anything, so I picked the hardest shot in disc golf. Here's Dustin Keegan on how to throw straight.
All right, welcome back to Physics of Flight. My name is Dustin Keegan. I'm going to try to teach you guys how to throw a straight shot. One of the most simple shots in disc golf is throwing it straight, but it's actually one of the hardest things to actually execute. My suggestion would be to start with slower speed discs. I got a couple putters here, my favorite being the Opto Pure. This is probably the straightest disc I've ever thrown. And then I also use a Marshall for a little more stability on straighter shots. And then I'll move up to the Truth, which you kind of got to put on hyzer a touch to get them to go straight, but they really like gliding and finishing forward. My suggestion for throwing straight is to really focus on having your shoulders over your hips and not lowering your deck, not reaching back with your shoulders at all, because that's going to create an anhyzer. Lowering is going to make a hyzer line. So really focusing on an even balanced position of your body. So when you're standing here, you're feeling all the weight on the middle of your feet. And as you do your run up, everything's centered. Everything's trying to stay over each other. You're not bending, you're not leaning forward, you're not leaning back. Those are creating angles. So the goal to keeping a straight, flat shot is to keeping your body even to the ground. Shoulders over hips, hips over knees, etc. First, let's say this is your T-pad here. A common thing, one of the biggest issues for new players trying to throw straight, trying to master angle control, is the run-up. People don't talk about it very much, but throwing a straight shot starts with your run-up. It's not about your form, it starts with your run-up. If I'm on the left side of the T-pad trying to throw a straight shot and I run toward the right, I'm running at a hyzer angle. So to try and throw straight while running at a hyzer angle isn't going to work very well. And same with the anhyzer. If I'm on the right side and I'm running to the left and try to throw straight, I'm going to come across my body and it's not going to work. So really focus on lining straight in the middle of your T-pad and running at it straight so you finish through the middle of your T-pad. So I'll show you one quick demo just to see. Here's Opto Pier. My thought process for straight is really holding it flat to the ground. No angle, no break. The flatter I hold it, the straighter it will fly, being a 0, 0, 0 fade, 0 turn. So here's a quick demo. So you see how that one drifted a touch to the right, but I'm pretty much finished dead straight in the middle of my T-pad. That's a kind of beat up year-old Pure, so I really have to trust the hyzer to get it to flat, but a brand new one, you just throw it flat and it will just go dead straight. The whole idea of throwing straight is keeping the disc level as you pull it through. So as I'm coming through, it's flat, it's flat, it's flat. It's still flat, still flat, still flat, and then I follow through straight. So my shoulders are always kind of behind my hips, but I'm still over everything. And then when you come through, you're really bent down low so you don't drop your angle. It's keeping it flat. So this one, Classic Blend Marshall, has a little more stability, but still really wants to go straight and penetrate forward. I'm gonna put it on a touch of hyzer since I have a small tailwind, and you're just gonna watch it kind of go straight on hyzer, which is a really cool shot shape. So if you notice that held the hyzer the whole way, but it finished in the exactly straight line that I was throwing, even though it was on a hyzer line. Marshalls really like to do that. All right, for a straight line, common misconception is you need to really power a disc to get it to go straight. So what I tell people is you really want to focus on how flat you hold it, but you don't have to reach all the way back to get power to keep a disc straight. One thing I really focus on, because I'm throwing putters so they're really accurate, you really don't need a full reach back to get the power. You kind of abbreviated 3/4 reach back and then really focus on your follow through to get through the shot as quick as possible to put the power you need to finish the disc straight. I'll show you one quick example here. So it's just a quick little pullback, and an explosive follow through is going to give you enough energy on a disc to make it travel straight and let it finish straight. I will throw a Truth. This one's a little faster. The faster you get with your discs, the flippier they need to be to go straight. if that makes sense. So if I'm throwing a really fast disc and it's really overstable, it's not gonna go straight, no matter what you do. So I'll throw an example with this Truth. This one's kind of beat up, so I need to put it on a little bit of hyzer. But it's the same concept as a putter, just a faster disc, so I might need to hit it a little bit harder. But it's more of a controlled reach back and an explosive follow through. Just one quick example. So that one I got a little nose up and it hyzered out at the end, but it really ended directly straight on my line. All right, we're gonna move on to a little bit of a longer shot. I really, really like the Maverick and the Explorer. Those are my two bread and butter for straight tunnel shots, woods shots, 320 to 400 feet. And as you get faster, you need to flip your disc. So I will start with the Maverick. This is a naturally more flippier disc, so I really need to focus on my angle. I'm really trying to stay controlled on my reach back and explosive through my follow through, and I'm running as straight as possible, and I'm kind of putting it on a 20-degree hyzer and hoping it flips to flat, and then a Maverick will finish straight. This is a Gold Line Burst Explorer from the United States Amateur Match Play. I don't have to flip it to flat, but if I throw it flat, it will hold, maybe drift a touch right. So here will be one example of the Gold Line Explorer. Look at that thing, dead straight. We'll get to even faster. When I step up to shots, I really want to finish straight and really need some distance as well. I go with the Getaway, especially a Biofusion Getaway. This is my favorite fairway for long range straight shots. Show an example with the Getaway. So you notice that went really straight. It was gonna fade out at the end. I had to click, my weight was a little back, which came over the disc a touch. So it came out of my hand at maybe a 2 to 3 degree anhyzer, which equals just dead straight with a Getaway because of that superior glide it has. And then as you go more stable, you have to put more ante on it to have it keep that straight line. You have to really commit to a couple degrees of anhyzer and this disc will go really straight, but being at a speed 13, speed 12, and it slows down, it's gonna hyzer out no matter what. So I'll show you an example of how my body looks while I'm throwing the fastest disc in my bag as flat and straight as possible. So if you notice that Ballista was drifting a tut, maybe 5 to 6 feet off the line, I put it on to the right, but if it didn't hit that tree, it would have hyzered right back to the middle. Try to teach yourself how to throw straight with putters first. It's much, much easier. It's more controllable. When you mess up, you notice instantly. You don't need a lot of power to throw straight. A lot of people think they really need to rip a disc to get it to flip to flat to finish straight, where if you actually just hold them flat and hold it flat to the parallel to whatever ground you're on, but just not bending at the waist. This is a hyzer, this is an anhyzer, flat is straight. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned some tips, some technique, some areas to focus on while you're working on your own game. And hopefully with all these tips, next time you stepped up to your dreaded tunnel hole, you're ready, you're excited, you're confident, you know what you're doing, and you trust your stuff, and you hit that line.
That's it for this episode of Physics of Flight. If you liked this episode, make sure you let me know by hitting the thumbs up button down below, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss next episode. If you've noticed, we started with distance drivers and we're kind of working our way towards the basket, so you're definitely not going to want to miss next week. I'll see you soon.